Night, the farm was dark, silent. Rain hammered the dirt roads, turning them to mud. No lights in the main house, no movement in the barn. Just acres of open land stretching into darkness. Then a sound, engines, low rumble. Getting closer, 3 vehicles rolled onto the property. Headlights off, moving slow, tires crunching over gravel. They stopped 50 yards from the barn, doors opened. 6 men stepped out, hooded jackets, bandanas, weapons visible in the dim light. One of them laughed quiet. Confident, told you, nobody here. Another kicked at the fence post. Old man probably doesn't even lock his doors. They moved toward the barn, spreading out, casual, like they had all the time in the world. Then the floodlights exploded to life, bright, blinding. Every corner of the farm illuminated in harsh white light. The men froze, shielding their eyes. Cursing. A loudspeaker crackled, static. Then silence, no voice, no warning. Just the hum of electricity and the sound of rain. One of the men raised his weapon, scanning the darkness beyond the lights. Where the hell? A single gunshot cracked through the air, sharp, precise, echoing across the open land. The lead truck's front tire exploded, rubber shredding. The vehicle dropped forward. Useless. The men scattered, shouting, diving behind vehicles. Weapons up, but no target in sight. Another shot, second truck. Rear tire this time. Same result. Panic spread like wildfire. Where is he? I can't see him. Get back in the truck! The tires are gone! A siren wailed. Distant at first, then closer. Red and blue lights flickering through the trees a mile down the road. The men looked at each other, at their dead vehicles. At the floodlights still blazing, one of them ran, then another, abandoning the trucks, sprinting into the darkness toward the tree line. The leader stood frozen, staring at the barn, at the farmhouse, at the fence line, trying to figure out where the shots came from. He couldn't, because Steven Seagal was already watching him through a scope. Finger resting beside the trigger. Not on it, beside it, waiting. The loudspeaker crackled again. This time, a voice. Calm, cold. You have 2 minutes before they arrive. The leader's weapon dropped slightly. His confidence shattered. He ran. The farm fell silent again. Just the rain, the sirens, the floodlights burning. Steven lowered the rifle. Exhaled slowly. It was over before it started. 6 hours earlier, the sun was setting over the farm. Golden light stretched across acres of open land, fields, a barn. A modest 2-story house with a wraparound porch, quiet, peaceful. The kind of place people drove past without a second thought. Steven Seagal walked along the fence line, work gloves on, checking posts, replacing a loose wire, simple maintenance routine. A dog trotted beside him. Old border collie, grey around the muzzle, loyal. Steven paused, looked out over his property, miles of land. No neighbors close enough to hear a shout. No security guards, no fancy cameras on every corner. Just him, the land, and silence. He liked it that way. He finished the fence repair, walked back toward the barn. The dog followed. They moved slowly. No rush, no urgency. Inside the barn, tools hung organized on pegboards. Bags of feed stacked neatly. A workbench with a vise, everything in its place. Steven washed his hands at a utility sink, dried them on a rag, checked his watch, 5:30. He headed to the house, boots on the porch, door unlocked. No alarm system beeping. Inside was simple, functional. A living room with worn furniture, kitchen with a wood table. No expensive electronics, no art on the walls screaming wealth, just a man living quietly. Steven made coffee, stood at the kitchen window looking out at the land as the sun dipped lower. He didn't see the sedan parked on the county road half a mile away. In the sedan, 4 men sat watching through binoculars. The driver was young, mid-20s, tattoos on his neck. He lowered the binoculars, grinned. Told you. One old man, living alone. The passenger beside him scrolled through a phone. Property records say he owns 200 acres. Has to be worth something. Equipment in that barn's got to be valuable, another voice said from the back seat. The driver nodded. And he's out here by himself. No cameras I can see, no dogs except that old one. What about alarms? Look at this place. The driver gestured at the farm. Does that look like a guy with a security system? They all laughed. The man in the back seat leaned forward, older than the others, 30s, scars on his hands. We wait until dark. Hit it fast. Load what we can. Gone in 10 minutes. What if he's there? So what? He's one guy. There's 6 of us. The leader's voice was flat, confident. And if he tries anything, he didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The driver started the engine. Pulled away slowly. "We'll come back at midnight. Lights off. Quick in and out." They drove away, laughing, planning. Already spending money they hadn't stolen yet. None of them had asked the important question. Why would a man live alone on 200 acres of land with no visible security? Why would someone who clearly valued privacy choose a location this remote? And why did the barn have reinforced locks on the outside, but not the inside? Back at the farmhouse, Steven finished his coffee. Set the mug in the sink. He walked to a closet in the hallway, opened it. Inside wasn't coats and shoes, it was a gun safe, rifle cases, ammunition boxes, a radio scanner. Night vision gear, all organized, all maintained, all ready. Steven didn't open it, just looked at it for a moment. Then he closed the closet door, walked to his bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out his phone, checked the security app. 12 cameras, positioned across the property, motion sensors on every access road, silent alarm connected directly to the sheriff's office. All of it invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. Steven set the phone on the nightstand, lay back and waited. Midnight, the farm was dark, no moon. Heavy clouds blocking the stars, rain starting to fall, perfect conditions, or so they thought. The 3 vehicles rolled onto the property. Headlights off, engines barely audible over the rain. They stopped at the tree line, 50 yards from the barn. Still on Steven's land but hidden in shadows, doors opened. 6 men stepped out, all wearing dark clothes, hoodies, gloves, bandanas pulled up over their faces. The leader raised his hand, pointed 2 men toward the barn, 2 toward the house. The last one stayed with the vehicles, silent communication. They'd done this before. The 2 heading to the barn moved first, crouched low, fast, crossing the open ground inside the farmhouse. A phone vibrated on the nightstand. Steven's eyes opened. He'd been awake already, waiting. He picked up the phone, checked the screen. Motion detected. North access road. Motion detected east property line. Motion detected barn proximity. 3 alerts. Multiple targets. Steven stood, already dressed, jeans, dark shirt, boots. He walked to the hallway closet, opened it, pulled out a rifle case, opened it smoothly. Bolt-action rifle, scope mounted, magazine loaded with 5 rounds. He checked it. Muscle memory. Practiced 1,000 times. Then he grabbed night vision goggles, a radio, a small tablet showing camera feeds. The dog stood at his feet, alert, ears forward. "Stay," Steven said quietly. The dog sat, watching. Steven moved through the house. No sound, just shadows. He went to the back door, opened it, stepped onto the porch. Rain hit his face, cold, steady. He moved along the side of the house, staying low, keeping the structure between him and the barn. On the tablet, he watched the feed. 2 men at the barn door, one trying the lock, the other scanning the area, weapon in hand. 2 more approaching the house from the west, slow, careful. 1 still at the vehicles. Lookout. 6 total. Just like the app showed. What would you do if intruders were on your property right now? Steven reached the corner of the house, knelt behind a water trough, solid cover. Good angle. He raised the rifle, looked through the scope. Night vision kicked in, everything green and clear. The 2 men at the barn were prying at the lock now. Metal scraping, quiet but audible. The leader made a hand signal. "Hurry up." Steven watched, didn't move. Not yet. The men at the barn got the lock off, pulled the door open, stepped inside. That's when Steven pressed a button on the tablet. Motion sensor lights inside the barn activated. Bright, harsh. The men inside shouted, startled, hands up to shield their eyes. The leader's head snapped toward the barn. What the hell? Steven pressed another button. The dog started barking, loud, aggressive. From inside the house, the 2 men approaching the house froze, looked at each other. "There's a dog. He said there was just one old one. That doesn't sound old." The leader hissed into his radio. "Get out of the barn now." The 2 men stumbled out, blinded, disoriented. Steven tracked them through the scope. Steady, calm. He moved the crosshairs, not to their heads, not to their chests, to the lead truck's front tire. He exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked through the rain, sharp, echoing. The tire exploded, rubber shredding. The truck dropped forward with a heavy thud. Silence, then chaos. "Shots fired! Where?" "I can't see him." The men scattered, running for cover, behind vehicles, behind fence posts, weapons up, scanning. Panicked, but they were looking in the wrong direction. Steven was already moving low, fast, circling around toward the barn. He reached a new position, knelt behind a tractor, raised the rifle again. The lookout at the vehicles was shouting into a phone, trying to call for backup. Steven centered the scope on the second truck's rear tire, exhaled, squeezed another shot. Another tire destroyed. The men were yelling now, confused, scared. "He's got us pinned! Where is he shooting from? We need to go!" The leader tried to regain control. "Get to the trucks. We can still..." That's when the floodlights came on, all of them, at once, illuminating every inch of the property. The men were fully exposed. Nowhere to hide, and somewhere in the darkness beyond the lights, Steven Seagal watched through his scope, waiting for their next mistake. The floodlights burned bright, rain falling through the beams like silver needles. The 6 men were scattered across the property, behind vehicles, behind fence posts, crouched low, exposed. They'd walked into a trap they didn't even know existed. The leader pressed his back against the disabled truck, weapon raised, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the lights. "Where is he?" he shouted. No answer, just rain. Just the hum of the floodlights. One of the men near the barn tried to move. Took 3 steps toward the tree line. A red laser dot appeared on the ground in front of him. Tracking, following his movement, he froze. Stared at it. He's got a laser sight. The dot moved up slowly, to his chest, then stopped. The man didn't breathe. Then the dot disappeared. No shot. Just a warning. The man stumbled backward, retreated to cover. At the vehicles, the lookout was panicking. "We need to leave! Now! The tires are gone!" Someone yelled back, "Ah, he'll pick us off!" The leader's mind was racing, calculating. They'd scouted this place, watched it for days. One old man, no security, easy target. But now they were pinned down. 2 vehicles disabled, lights everywhere. And a shooter they couldn't locate. How he looked around, really looked. That's when he saw them, small black dumbs, mounted on posts, on the barn roof, on the corners of the house, cameras. His stomach dropped. He's been watching us the whole time. Another man followed his gaze, saw the cameras. "How many?" "I count 6, maybe more. Why didn't we see those before?" "Because we weren't looking." The leader's voice was bitter, angry at himself. They'd been arrogant, assumed, saw what they wanted to see, an old man living alone, easy money. They never asked why someone would live this far out, this isolated. They never questioned why the barn had reinforced doors but no visible alarm system. They never wondered why a man with 200 acres of land lived so quietly. Because people who live quietly aren't always harmless. Sometimes they're just waiting. One of the men near the house tried his radio. "Backup's 10 minutes out." "We don't have 10 minutes. The leader looked at the triod. 50 yards, maybe less. If they ran, a loudspeaker crackled to life. The voice was calm, even. No anger, no excitement. "You're standing in a kill zone. Every position you've taken is visible from at least 2 angles. I'm not aiming at you right now, but I could be." The men looked at each other. Fear replacing bravado, the voice continued. "The cameras started recording the moment you entered the property. Your faces, your vehicles, your license plates. The sheriff has all of it. They're 4 minutes away." One of the younger men looked ready to bolt. "He's bluffing." "Am I?" The voice was still calm. "Check the barn door. You forced the lock. Your fingerprints are on it. Check the fence line. You cut the wire. Your DNA is on the tools you dropped." The leader closed his eyes. They'd left evidence everywhere. "You came here thinking I was an easy target." A pause. "You were wrong." Sirens, faint but growing louder. The men heard it, started moving, panic spreading. "We need to go! The trucks! Forget the trucks! Run!" They scattered, running toward the tree line, abandoning their vehicles, their weapons. Their plan. Steven watched them through the scope. Tracked each one. Could have taken the shot. Clean, easy. But he didn't. He lowered the rifle, pressed a button on the tablet. The cameras zoomed in, capturing faces, recording everything. The sirens were closer now. Red and blue lights flickering through the rain. 2 men made it to the tree line, disappeared into the darkness. 3 more were running across the field. The leader stood alone by the truck, hands on his head. He knew he wasn't getting away. Not from the cameras, not from the evidence. Not from the man who'd spent 6 hours preparing for exactly this moment. Sheriff's vehicles rolled onto the property, lights blazing. Officers stepping out, weapons drawn, down on the ground. Now the leader dropped, face in the mud, hands behind his back. Steven emerged from the shadows, rifle lowered, Safe on, a deputy approached. "Mr. Seagal, you all right?" "Fine. How many were there?" "6. 2 made it to the trees." The deputy nodded, spoke into his radio. "We need K9 units." 2 suspects fled on foot. Steven handed over the tablet. "Camera footage. Full recording. Starts when they entered the access road." The deputy took it. Looked at Steven. "You didn't fire on them?" Steven gestured to the disabled trucks. "No injuries. Could have been justified. Didn't need to be." The leader lay face down in the mud. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. A deputy pulled him to his feet. "You have the right to remain silent." "I know my rights." The leader spat. His face was covered in mud, rain dripping off his hood. The deputy walked him toward a patrol car. Past the disabled trucks, past the barn with its forced lock, past the cameras that had recorded everything. He pushed the leader into the back seat. Slammed the door. Through the window, the leader watched as 2 more of his crew were brought out of the field in handcuffs. Muddy. Defeated 5 arrests. 1 still running. The entire raid collapsed in less than 7 minutes. Sheriff Martinez walked over to Steven. Late 50s, grey beard, weathered face. He'd known Steven for 10 years. "Hell of a way to spend a Tuesday night," Martinez said. Steven nodded, still holding the rifle. "Wasn't planning on it. You could have called us first." "I did." Silent alarm went off the moment they breached the property line. Steven gestured to the tablet in the deputy's hands. "You got the alert same time I did." Martinez looked at the timestamp on the footage. "So you had 4 minutes alone with them before we arrived. More than enough time. You disabled 2 vehicles. Didn't fire on any of the suspects." Martinez studied Steven's face. "Why not?" Steven looked at the handcuffed men being loaded into patrol cars. "They made mistakes. Doesn't mean they need to die for them. They came here armed. With intent. I know. They would have hurt you if they'd gotten the chance. Maybe." Steven's voice was calm. Factual. "But they didn't get the chance." Martinez was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Restraint like that. Not many people have it. Not about restraint. It's about control." Steven lowered the rifle, engaged the safety. "The moment I decided to let them walk into the lights, the outcome was already decided. Could you stay calm when your home was under attack?" A K9 unit arrived, German Shepherd barking from inside the vehicle. The handler let the dog out, gave it a scent from the abandoned jacket near the truck. The dog took off toward the tree line. Handler following, flashlight cutting through the rain. Martinez watched them go. "We'll find the last 2. Always do." "I know." "You get a good look at them." Steven nodded. "Camera's got facial recognition on all 6, already sent to your system." Martinez shook his head, impressed despite himself. "You had this place locked down like a military base. Just prepared. Most people would have hidden, called 911. Waited for us." "I'm not most people, clearly." Martinez gestured to the farm. "How long you been set up like this?" "Since I moved here. 10 years of preparation for one night." Steven looked at him. "I prepared for 10 years so this one night would end without anyone dying." That landed. Martinez understood. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't fear. It was discipline. Forethought. The kind of planning that separated professionals from amateurs. "You were special forces," Martinez said. Not a question, a statement. Steven didn't confirm or deny, just looked out at his property. Martinez knew better than to push. "We'll need a statement, full report. I'll come by in the morning." "Fair enough." Martinez turned to leave. Stopped. "Steven." "Yeah, you could have turned this into a bloodbath. 6 armed men. Dark night. Your property. No witnesses except what you wanted on camera." Steven waited. "But you didn't. You immobilized them, controlled the situation, let the law handle the rest." Martinez extended his hand. "That's the difference between a soldier and a warrior." Steven shook it, once. Firm. Martinez walked back to his vehicle, stopped at the door, called back. "Get some rest. You earned it." "Why not?" "Still got 1 in the field." As if on cue, the K9 handler's radio crackled. "We got him. Suspect in custody." Steven exhaled. Finally Martinez grinned. "Now get some rest." The patrol cars pulled away, red and blue lights fading into the rain. Steven stood in the middle of his property, alone, rifle in hand. Dog sitting beside him. The farm fell quiet again. The last patrol car pulled away. Taillights disappearing into the rain, Steven stood in the middle of his property silent. Still, the rifle resting against his shoulder, the dog sat beside him. Alert. waiting for a command that didn't come. The floodlights were still on, illuminating the disabled trucks, the forced barn door, the muddy tire tracks across his land, evidence of a battle that never became won. Steven walked to the barn, looked at the broken lock on the ground. The pry marks on the metal door, he'd have to replace it. Add it to the list. He stepped inside. The motion lights activated, bright, revealing tools still hanging organized on the walls, equipment untouched, feed bags unmoved. They'd been inside for maybe 30 seconds, gotten nothing. Steven picked up the broken lock, turned it over in his hand, cheap hardware store brand. They'd snapped it easily. He tossed it into a scrap bin, made a mental note. Better locks, reinforced hasps, always improving, always learning. He walked back out, closed the barn door. It wouldn't latch now. He'd deal with it in the morning. The rain was lighter now, just a drizzle. The clouds breaking up overhead. Steven moved to the disabled trucks, looked at the shredded tires, front and rear. Precision shots, center mass on the rubber. No collateral damage to the vehicles themselves, no bullet holes in the cab, no shattered windows, no blood on the ground. Just disabled transport. He walked around the first truck, checked the bed, tools, bolt cutters, crowbars, bags for carrying stolen goods. They'd come prepared. Just not for him. A voice called from the darkness. Mr. Seagal. Steven turned. A deputy was walking back up the driveway, young, mid-20s, fresh face. Forgot something? Steven asked. Sheriff wanted me to check if you needed anything. Medical evil. Someone to stay while you secure the property. I'm fine. The deputy nodded. Looked at the trucks. At the barn, at Steven standing calmly in the rain like this was just another Tuesday. Can I ask you something? The deputy said. Go ahead. Why'd you let them get so close? You had cameras, motion sensors. You could have stopped them at the property line. Steven was quiet for a moment. Because stopping them at the line doesn't prove intent, doesn't give you enough for prosecution. The deputy blinked. You wanted them to commit the crime. I wanted you to have evidence that holds up in court. Steven gestured to the barn. Forced entry, attempted burglary, trespassing with weapons, all on camera, all documented. You were building a case. I was making sure they couldn't walk away clean. The deputy looked at him differently now. This wasn't just self-defense. This was strategy. They didn't know they were already caught the moment they arrived. The deputy said, No, they didn't. That's cold. That's tactical. Steven's voice was even, unbothered. Emotion gets people killed. Planning keeps them alive. The deputy absorbed that. Is that what they taught you in the service? Steven didn't answer directly. They taught me to assess threats, control outcomes, and only use lethal force when there's no other option. Tonight had other options. It always does. If you're willing to think instead of react. The deputy nodded. Respect clear on his face. Well, you thought it through better than they did. They didn't think at all. That's why they lost. Steven turned back toward the house. The conversation was over. The deputy called after him. Mr. Seagal? Steven stopped, looked back. I'm glad you were the one they tried to rob, not some family with kids, not some elderly couple. Why? Because you knew how to handle it without anyone dying. The deputy paused. Most people wouldn't have had that discipline. Steven nodded once. Most people shouldn't have to. He walked back to the house, the dog following, boots heavy on the wet porch steps. Behind him, the deputy got in his vehicle, pulled away slowly. The farm fell silent again. Steven stepped inside, set the rifle in the hallway closet, locked it. Took off his boots. His phone buzzed. A text from Sheriff Martinez. Tow truck coming at 7 a.m. for the vehicles. Need you to sign off on property release. Thanks for keeping it clean. Steven typed back. Copy. He set the phone down, walked to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, drank it slowly, looking out the window at his land, 200 acres, quiet, peaceful, worth defending, but not worth killing for, not tonight. Dawn broke over the farm. The rain had stopped. Sky clearing, soft golden light stretching across the fields. Steven stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. The disabled trucks were still there, waiting for the tow company, evidence of last night. But the farm looked peaceful again, quiet, like nothing had lay at his feet. Resting, eyes half closed, a tow truck rumbled up the driveway. Driver stepped out, clipboard in hand. Mr. Seagal. Steven nodded. Sheriff sent me. Got 2 vehicles to pick up. Over there. Steven pointed. The driver walked over, looked at the shredded tires, whistled low.
Heard what happened. You all right? Fine. 6 guys.
Armed, the driver shook his head. Lucky you knew what you were doing.
Wasn't luck.
The driver looked at him. Understanding settling in?
No, I guess it wasn't.
He hooked up the first truck, winched it onto the flatbed. Moved to the second. Steven watched. Sipping coffee, not saying much, the driver finished loading, walked back over. Anything else you need? No. That's it. Well, glad you're okay. The driver climbed into his truck. Paused. Must have been scary, having them show up like that. Steven looked at him. Fear's a choice. I chose preparation instead. The driver thought about that, nodded. Smart man. He drove away. The trucks disappearing down the road, Steven walked to the barn, opened the door, looked at the forced lock sitting in the scrap bin. He picked it up, examined the break point. Clean snap. Weak metal. He tossed it back, pulled out his phone, ordered a new lock, commercial grade, hardened steel. It would arrive by Friday. He walked back to the house, the dog following. Inside, he put the rifle back in the safe, secured it, closed the closet door, checked the security app. All cameras functioning, motion sensors reset, alerts cleared, everything back to normal. He sat at the kitchen table, opened a notebook, started writing, not a journal, a debrief. What worked? What didn't? What could be improved? The motion lights in the barn were effective. The floodlights created the psychological advantage he'd planned for. The rifle shots were accurate, but the lock failed too easily. The cameras could use infrared upgrades. The dog needed to be closer to the entry points. Always learning, always improving. He finished writing, closed the notebook, set it aside, stood, walked to the window. The farm stretched out before him. 200 acres, his land, his responsibility. Some people saw isolation as vulnerability. Steven saw it as control. Out here, he made the rules, set the terms, decided the outcomes. Last night, 6 men came to take what wasn't theirs. They left in handcuffs, not because Steven was violent, but because he was ready. He poured another cup of coffee, walked back onto the porch. The day was just beginning, and the farm was quiet again. Real power doesn't chase enemies. It waits, prepared, and when chaos arrives, it decides how far things go.